Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Presley, and in this video today, I want to give you my full review for Assorted Crisis Events Volume 1, so let's jump right into it. Now, Assorted Crisis Events was written by Dennis Camp. I say Dennis Camp. Let me know in the comments down below how you say his name, Dennis Camp. It was drawn by Eric Zawalski and colored by Jordi Belair. Now, this is an anthology series, so I am still going to break down the review in a bunch of different criteria, the same as I do with all the other reviews, but it's going to be a little bit different in terms of how I talk about it because none of these stories connect to one another. They technically do a little bit, but they are all individual. But yes, let's jump right into the first criteria, which is that artwork. Now, right off the bat, from the very first page of this entire book, I really dug the artwork. It's super interesting. I love Eric Zawalski's artwork. It's super cool. And I think one of the best parts about it is his background storytelling. So we have characters in the foreground doing something beautiful as always, and it's paired with the beautiful coloring by Jordi Belair. A lot of interesting colors throughout here. But when these characters are doing said things in the foreground, we have people in the background. There's one, especially in the first issue, where we see 4 different panels of this woman and man getting married to each other, and then he dies and like she mourns. It's a great little like sub story inside the main story. Really, really fun. The artwork is great throughout here. It's very sketchy and it fits the story really well. There's a lot of blood, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of action that's really portrayed well throughout here. The passage of time throughout here is portrayed really well in this artwork as well. Zawadzki does a great job of showing the same characters but with a lot of age on them or very youthful. Really good stuff. And Jordi Belair's colors are super interesting throughout here. There are a lot of pages in this book that are not colored normally. It's very like two-tone, like either orange and yellow or like blue and white or like red and white or red and black. Like there's a lot of two-tone colors throughout here that aren't realistic colors, and I think it's really interesting for the story, and it kind of creates this sense of atmosphere throughout. Overall, the artwork is fantastic, and I had to give it a 5 stars out of 5. I really, really dig Zawadzki's style, and it's becoming one of my favorites. Now let's talk about the world building, the atmosphere, and the mood. This is where Dennis Camp does a really, really good job. He crafts 5 different stories throughout here. They all have this underlying premise of time is breaking down. Time is not what it used to be. It's very much like there's all these different phenomenon going on, and it's just not moving normal, and it's not just progressing forward in time properly. And even though these stories don't connect to each other in terms of what's actually happening to the characters, they all have that underlying problem of ATPs, which are atypical temporal phenomenon. And that basically just means, yeah, that time is breaking down. And it's amazing. This world building throughout this book is incredible. I love every single issue throughout here. I love how just weird and dystopian a lot of it feels. It feels so messed up. And as somebody who like experiences time normally marching forward, seeing all these weird time loops and different universes and multiverses colliding into one another, super interesting. I love how dangerous it feels, and overall the world building throughout here is great. Same with the mood. It feels very hopeless because none of these people can actually do anything to stop it. All they do is get alerts on their phones to see what's happening if there's ATPs near them, and I loved it. I have to get the world building, the mood, and the atmosphere a 5 stars out of 5. Dennis Camp does an amazing job with it. The story, the progression, and the flow, this is where the book excels the absolute most, especially on the story front, because yes, these are 5 different stories within this universe. So I really, really, really dug each one of these stories. I'll talk about them all a little bit right here. So the first story involves this woman who is in this apartment building, and they're always shooting like apocalyptic films outside of her apartment, and they use her and other people that live there as extras without paying them. It's very dystopian and it feels very messed up. But what happens throughout here is really, really cool. She's just trying to get her clock fixed because it broke during the filming of one of these movies. And as she's just going about trying to get this fixed, these ATPs, all these different things from different universes are colliding into one in this little time period and clashing and dying, and people are getting killed every step of the way, and she can't tell what's real and what's not real, and something in the end happens throughout here, and it's really, really great. It's really emotional, and I think it's a really great issue. However, I think it is my least favorite of all the issues throughout here, just because the next stories are great. So the next one involves a guy who works at a slaughterhouse, and he's been surrounded by blood and violence his entire life, and so it's kind of shaped him into who he is now, and now he's become desensitized to it. But that story is basically a metaphor, but also not really a metaphor because they kind of talk about it, just like a message about how people need their mothers in times of crisis. Really great story, one of the best in the entire book. The next one involves, one of them involves a guy who is aging at a rapid pace, so he's not remembering any of his life, and it's kind of a metaphor for working yourself to death and smoking and getting yourself to an early grave without remembering anything that's actually going on in your life. Great stuff throughout here. Another one, this is actually issue 3, was Earth 1 and Earth 2. They call them Hearths, colliding to one another and seeing how these people who are even the same in parallel Earths oppress one another and hate one another, even though they are the same people. It's like if myself and myself from another Earth came together, just them fighting, them not supporting one another. Really great story. And then the final one throughout here is about a girl who is stuck in a traumatic time loop and experiences millions of years inside her own mind, even though she's only progressing minutes in the day because this trauma that she's constantly reliving in her entire life. It is an amazing story, and honestly the best one in the entire book. Overall, I had to give the stories to all of these a 5 stars out of 5. Easily the best part about it. And these stories, as amazing as the artwork is, the stories are what kept me reading because of how interesting Denise Camp was with the different ideas throughout here. I think it was fantastic. When it comes to the characters, yes, there's characters for each of these different stories, and I think they all play a great role. Not only are they distinct characters from one another, but they're all vessels for these messages to take place, and I thought it was great. I love how Denise Camp allows us to learn more about these characters as we go along throughout the issue. We don't just learn everything we need to know about them from the very beginning. We constantly learn what makes them cry, what makes them angry as we go along. One thing that really helps with this character development is that these issues are a little bit longer than typical issues. The typical superhero issues like 28 to 32 pages, but these are minimum like 36 pages, some of them upwards of the mid 40s. And it really gives these characters time to develop and we get to see more about them. They feel very real. And that is just another nod to Denise Camp's amazing writing. Had to give the characters a 5 stars out of 5. There aren't any villains throughout this book, really, but the conflict resolution through each one of these is great. The main, like, villain, if you want to call it, is the ATPs, the atypical temporal phenomenon, which is just the timeline breaking down. The conflict resolution throughout here, all these different characters are understanding what's going on to them. At first, they're not understanding, and then they start understanding what's going on as we start breaking it down more. We're figuring it out with them, and that's a really fun way to write a story and to read a story, is to figure it out along with the characters. And by the end, a lot of these characters understand, oh, well, this is actually what's going on with me. Some of them don't. Like the Assorted Crisis Event, the first issue, she doesn't even know if they're actually filming, if this is all fake, or if this is real happening around her. It's really great stuff throughout here. Overall, the conflict resolution and the villains section has to get a 4.5 stars just because there isn't really one particular thing throughout here that is like destroying them all, but overall 4.5 stars. So yes, before we get into the rating, I just want to say that I really loved Assorted Crisis Events. Thought it was a fantastic book. I can't wait for volume 2. Volume 2 collects issues 6 through 9, and I believe that comes out in August. Super excited for that, cannot wait. But yes, if you haven't read Assorted Crisis Events Volume 1, you definitely should. It was recommended to me by my local comic shop, Blackbird Comics, and I picked it up and I thought it was fantastic. With that being said, let's get right into the rating. So yes, I had to give this book a 5 stars out of 5. It was amazing, it was fantastic, and even though issue 1 was my least favorite out of all of them, that doesn't mean it was bad. I still thought it was fantastic, but the book definitely ramped up as we went along, and I feel like each story ended up getting better and better. So I'm really excited for volume 2. It may blow volume 1 out of the water, but for right now, volume 1 is a fantastic 5 stars out of 5. If you haven't read it yet, I think you should definitely pick it up. Thank you so very much for watching this review. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later.